How's it going, my dudes? This video's brought to you by Squarespace today.
As the self-appointed spokesperson for all the JC shippers out there, I have to just approach it. I mean, I'm just giving myself the title, so I'm having it. Obviously, you have... Yes.
So in certain circles, demand has remained pretty much constant. But with all the glorious Janeway Chakotay goodness that we have been treated to in Star Trek Prodigy's second season, there is no time like the present to dive into the depths of all things JC. Now, before I do go any further, just to clarify, I know I've said JC in some previous videos and people have got a little bit confused. In the context of this video, in the context of pretty much any TrekCulture video at least, JC stands for Janeway and Chakotay. It's the ship name, the pairing name for Janeway and Chakotay as a couple. So that is what I mean when I say JC. You will hear that a lot in this video. Glad we cleared that up. Let's move on. Of course, nothing is ever that simple, especially with affairs of the heart, and of course, added to that, the affairs of space, the Delta Quadrant, and of course, the double standards applied to Star Trek's first lead female captain. Kate Mulgrew herself has openly discussed her stance on this particular premise, having had to put her foot down to the Star Trek Voyager executives about any romance developing between Janeway and Chakotay, basically for fear of Captain Janeway losing a degree of command credibility with the target audience, which is a fact that the likes of Kirk and Picard never even had to consider, unfortunately. Now, Kate Mulgrew also did have a hand in guiding JC in season 2 of Prodigy towards a stage beyond a love relationship. Indeed, the ties that now bind Janeway and Chakotay cannot be summarized or reduced to a basic romance. Theirs is a connection that has stood the test of time and even time travel at this point. And yes, okay, sure, we might still not have definitive, blatant proof that they are a couple, but that's almost the beauty of this real complex relationship. Confirmation comes from looking just a little bit deeper through interpretation of maybe a look or a phrase, or the subtle temporal nuances of a birthday gift. Let's take a look at some of the defining instances and determine perhaps for ourselves if the ship has finally set sail. I'm Ellie for TrekCulture, and these are 10 moments that confirm JC. Number 10, the knots and the knots of knots. Resolutions. Nothing says prelude to romance like deadly disease, plasma storms, and a shrieking monkey. Throw in a handcrafted bathtub, plans for a boat, and the notion of New Earth becoming a forever home, and Resolutions proves to be a pivotal moment for the shipping of JC, stranded as they were from the ship. Now, this semi-permanent camping trip, with all the perks of the 24th century, I might add, was the perfect way to explore the brewing unsaid between the now no longer captain and her now no longer first officer, both theoretically free in that environment to explore their feelings for each other. Now, it was revealed in Star Trek Voyager: A Celebration that viewers at the time had already begun to latch on to an implicit attraction between Janeway and Chakotay, a flirtation which the writers had started to subtly play up. I mean, that chemistry is palpable. We weren't seeing things, it was there. But for Resolution's writer and Voyager executive producer Jeri Taylor, the episode was actually meant to resolve the matter for the characters, specifically to show that the relationship was not going to happen. That being said though, there was an early idea for Resolution pitched by writer-producer Ken Biller, which would have actually taken JC even further, going into a time travel plot in which the pair would have aged 40 years and had a whole family. Unfortunately though, the end of the actual episode that we got saw everything go back to business as usual, back on board Voyager, with their feelings for each other having seemingly been left down on the planet along with their house and with the monkey. Now, whatever the overall outcome, that highly suggestive massage was difficult to ignore for anyone so much as glancing at the screen. And do not even get me started on Chakotay's not so subtle ancient legend, which all but clarified his feelings for Janeway, come on. This was yet another scene which actually saw an earlier draft explicitly state his feelings as love, before it was then toned down to a more ambiguous tale. But they love each other. Number 9, Comrades in Arms at Arm's Length, Scorpion and Equinox. "You are not alone, Catherine," came Chakotay's almost clairvoyant line in the first half of Scorpion Part 1. Whatever happened next with the Borg, they would face it together. And let's be honest, Chakotay was as much her comrade in arms as her fellow captains in the Alpha Quadrant. In response, Janeway spoke the words that should at this point probably be embossed on the cover of the JC Shipper's Guide. "3 years ago, I didn't even know your name. Today, I can't imagine a day without you." Ugh! Now we all know the appeal to the devil that ensued, the conflict that it created, and the different choices that the commander made once he was in charge. Far from diminishing or demeaning Janeway's original sentiment, however, the Borg backyard hurdles actually reinforced it. Out of their differences, out of their individuality, came their greatest strength. And let's not forget that Chakotay was actually really conflicted about going against Catherine's orders. And not because she was his superior officer, but because she means so much more than that to him. Because he loves her. And then later in the Equinox two-parter, Chakotay would once again question his captain's orders and actions, although arguably with far more of a justification this time around. And Janeway actually ended up relieving him of duty, and yet, even after all of that, Chakotay still felt that mutiny would have been crossing the line. And in the end, and in the manner of Voyager's dedication plaque, you couldn't keep the bond between them down for very long. Even at arm's length, Janeway and Chakotay always found a way to be more than just comrades in arms. Number 8, Koda decodified. Koda. Now, Koda is a tricky one for JC fans, but it is not to be skipped over either. So the vast majority of the episode actually doesn't take place within Voyager's common established reality. And yet all of it is hyper-real for its main protagonist, Captain Janeway. For the audience, the difference between real and imagined was indistinguishable for the most part. And when it came to Janeway's real feelings for Chakotay in this episode, there was probably no difference whatsoever. The episode's writer and executive producer, as I previously mentioned, Jerry Taylor, put it better when she stated that, quote, "Koda was an opportunity to show feelings between Janeway and Chakotay in a safe territory because it was all inside her head." Putting aside the brain-dwelling alien posing as her dead dad for a second, it's Janeway's perception of her own apparent death that really matters here. What she believed and felt for Chakotay, and in a sense vice versa, was no doubt more real than reality could be. It often seemed like perhaps the feelings were a little bit one-sided on Chakotay's part. But the fact that Koda is all part of Janeway's imagination just highlights that matters are very much mutual. She knows how he feels and she returns those feelings. And no one can help but be moved and transformed into a full-on JC shipper by Chakotay's heartbreaking plea as he tries to revive his captain as her ghost watches on. The complete and utter anguish in his cry when his efforts fail was absolutely heartbreaking to witness. This was 100% more than just an officer mourning for his colleague. And nobody can convince me otherwise, damn it. Number 7, allegorical timekeeping, Year of Hell. Although Captain Janeway hadn't realised it at first, to defeat megalomaniac Anorax and his high-tech manipulations of the timeline, she was going to need the decidedly lower tech of the 19th century silver pocket watch that Chakotay had offered her on her birthday. Her order to recycle it being just another one that Chakotay thankfully chose to disobey. Now, although the details of Captain Cray of the British Navy were slightly inaccurate, namely that it was actually a Captain Kane sailing to Australia rather than a Captain Cray sailing to London, Chakotay's allegory of the chronometer was perfectly apt for the more stricken than usual Voyager in Year of Hell Part 1. It also highlighted Chakotay's continued promise to always try and lighten Janeway's burdens. Even in the face of total destruction, he sought to raise her spirits and give her hope. After finding the watch buried in Chakotay's quarters in Part 2, after he had been kidnapped by the Krenim, it never left Janeway's right side. And checking it and his empty seat beside her before she engaged in a final, fateful battle, Janeway wore the chronometer until it and the entire timeline stopped ticking in order to begin anew. The power of Janeway's emotions and Chakotay's tale of optimism was enough to overcome even the greatest of adversaries. And time. Now, both Janeway's attachment to the watch and Chakotay's give Catherine my best to Paris on the weapon ship in Part 2 suggests to me at least that there was a greater degree of intimacy developing between these two within this forgotten timeline. But we will never know what was between these two because the entire year of hell was erased and forgotten, leaving JC shippers with a pocket watch-sized hole in their hearts. Number 6, borrowing Dante, shattered. When Voyager is split into however many levels of temporal hell in Shattered, Chakotay teams up with a fresh-faced pre-Delta Quadrant Captain Janeway as they try to get the space-time continuum back in sync. It's actually a rare final season episode to be carried by the Commander, and an even rarer later moment for JC, which kind of disappeared towards the end. After she questions his quoting of Dante's Inferno, Chakotay reveals that Janeway had lent him her copy of the work along their journey. Now, this act speaks volumes to Janeway, who notes that it had been an engagement gift from her fiancé Mark and that she had never lent it to anyone before. Of course, this version of Janeway didn't know it yet, but she was set to get the most well-travelled Dear John letter in human history from Mr. Johnson in Season 4's Hunters. I certainly don't blame her for quite literally cutting Mark out of the picture once Voyager got home, especially if we go by that photo with Molly in Admiral Janeway's Voyager A ready room. Mark definitely got cut out of that picture. Where JC is concerned though, Shattered missed the perfect opportunity to cross some barriers without the risk of consequences. With Janeway clearly picking up on that palpable chemistry between herself and Chakotay, at the end of the episode, she asked the pointed question of how close their future relationship becomes. If ever there was a perfect moment for Chakotay to just take a chance, this was it. But ever the respectful first officer, he simply states that there are some barriers they never cross. And no one can deny that there is a hint of disappointment in Janeway's eyes as she just takes a step back and formally shakes his hand. She doesn't even remember the events of this whole episode once the rift is sealed and we're back in the present, so he totally could have kissed her and there would have been no consequences. I'm fine.
Hi, I'm Tom Larkin, inventor of such products as Sugared Suliban Surprise.
My popular blog on Federation, Black Ops, developments in technology, and Daystrom Station injury updates, Don't Tell Starfleet, is moving to GTN. The Galaxy Truth Network is expanding, and that wouldn't be possible without Squarespace. You can completely personalize your website with the new guided design, Squarespace Blueprint AI. Daystrom Institute approved. Easily launch your website and get discovered at warp speed thanks to integrated optimized SEO doodads, so you show up more often to more civilizations.
Head to squarespace.com/TrekCulture for a free trial and 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
And remember, don't tell Starfleet.
Number 5, love conquers all, even resequenced engrams, workforce. So they tried the duplicitous xenophobic imperialist, the holographic barkeep, Q, and even Mr. Paris. But in order for Captain Janeway to have any semblance of a positive romantic relationship, she'd have to have her memories completely rewritten. To be fair, despite being based in total forceful fabrication, Janeway and Jaffan's love affair in Workforce was far from a deception, especially for Jaffan, whose identity had always been his own. In the two-parter, it is Chakotay, of course, in disguise, who goes to seek out Janeway. Later, even not knowing who he is beyond a slight recognition of seeing him earlier, Janeway feels compelled to come to an injured Chakotay's aid, which is just further confirmation that the JC bond persists somewhere deep down in the subconscious. But the deeper moment of connection is at the very end of Workforce. Janeway, now rescued from her other life, re-enters the bridge, and not without a degree of trepidation in her walk from the turbo lift. Most certain is that from the moment that she sits down in her chair next to Chakotay, there is no place that she would rather be. And when he asks her if she's sorry that they showed up, her response, though longing, is unwavering. Not for a second. Number 4, the Temporal Mechanics of Comrades, Endgame and Ascension Part 1. So deep was the love of alternate future Admiral Janeway for her former first officer and for her crew that she erased an entire timeline and Chakotay's premature death from existence. Were it not for the Admiral in Endgame, Voyager would still be traipsing its way through the Delta Quadrant, not sat as a museum with another letter added to the lineage. None of the events of Star Trek Prodigy, or most of Star Trek Picard for that matter, would have happened, and moreover, Chakotay would be married to and then mourning 7 of 9, and then of course he would be dead. That's rather the ultimate dampener on all things JC, isn't it? Can't really go much further if he's dead. As it was though, future Janeway did the galaxy, and quite honestly the fans, quite a few favours, allowing her younger self a chance with Chakotay, and let's face it, allowing 7 of 9 some far less random options elsewhere. On her trip back in time, the Admiral also brought those all good things uniforms and comm badges, which then provided for a really sweet full circle JC moment in Prodigy's Ascension Part 1. In that episode, Admiral Janeway, the real one, gives Chakotay his new comm badge, and the pair start to reminisce about the old Voyager. And looking out and ahead with Chakotay back by her side, Janeway notes, "Nothing stays the same forever. I'm looking forward to what comes next." Now that natural closeness of the pair, and also Chakotay's reminder that he is no longer her number 1, just adds that extra nugget of JC hope for the future. Please give us a season 3. Number 3, Last Light of the Hologram, Last Flight of the Protostar, and Ouroboros Part 2. The Star Trek Prodigy 2-parter Last Flight of the Protostar basically explored Chakotay's lonely seclusion on the planet Isida as he attempts to protect the Federation from the weapon on board his ship. Most notably, in those 10 years, his supplies dwindle, obviously, and he must preserve as much power as possible, which means that he had to eject the proto-core and vented the warp drives, which was literally his only means of leaving the planet, and therefore he had marooned himself. And yet, he still keeps the Hologram Janeway program running. In those 10 years, he still has a version of Catherine by his side. Now, Hologram Janeway has always been more than just a stand-in for the real Janeway. She is her own entity, and Chakotay's relationship to and love for her, which is purely platonic, and vice versa, is so unique. He knows that she's not a replacement for his Catherine, and yet that bond is still evident between them. She stood vigil while he mourned on Yesida and kept him from spiralling too far, and then he repaid that kindness in Ouroboros Part 2 when he championed Holo Janeway's individuality and her right to existence, working alongside the EMH to find a way to save her program. And while we're talking about the EMH, after a rather flirtatious scene between the two holograms in Touch of Grey, some people have suggested a new pairing. In fact, in an interview with Cinema Blend's Mick Jost, Robert Picardo actually confirmed that the flirtation was there in the script. Now, personally, not a fan of this ship. Now, while I am a big advocate for JC, obviously, I am also a firm believer that not every group of characters must be paired off into couples. Platonic, fun friendships are equally as exciting to watch, so let's not get silly now, okay? JC is one thing. Let's not start pairing Janeway and the Doctor as well. Number 2, Terran T's Cracked Mirror. Star Trek Prodigy's second season is as much a love letter to the JC fans as it is to JC themselves. And this is certainly highlighted in the episode Cracked Mirror. We have Mirror Janeway and Mirror Chakotay, demonstrating an intimate freedom that would never be shown by their prime counterparts, while still remaining demographically friendly. Of course, it's not just a show for kids, as we keep saying, but let's not forget the purpose of Prodigy with regards to younger viewers here. But the intimate teasing between the pair did manage to whet our more adult appetite, whilst maintaining the integrity and the modesty of their prime counterparts. While we might not get absolute confirmation in the Prime universe, that seductive stroking of Mirror Chakotay's beard assures the shippers that in this universe at least, JC is absolutely 100% a thing. And with Prime Chakotay's convincing words for Mirror Janeway's trust later in the episode, it would seem that that bond between them is present in any universe. This is my favourite line of the whole episode, because no matter what reality we're in, I could never hurt you. Because he loves her! The anticipation of Janeway and Chakotay's reunion is extremely high throughout Prodigy's second season. We've been waiting for this moment, and when the moment does finally arrive after that oh so cruel bait and switch at the beginning of the episode, it was everything we could have hoped for. The strong embrace, their voices faltering with emotion, that familiar loving look between them, and of course, her hand finding its comfortable place over his heart. Oh, my JC heart can't take it. Number 1, Mirror Mirror Charmuzi, Observer's Paradox. Displayed proudly amongst many items of personal sentiment within Admiral Janeway's ready room was another mirror. More compact than a universe, but no less great in significance, in fact maybe more so. One of Aaron Waltke's most deep-cut Easter eggs, this was the mirror of Isabo's shirt. Now that 2005 short story written by Kirsten Beyer and published in the anthology Distant Shores was set just a few weeks after Star Trek Voyager episode Bliss. And it is without a doubt one of, if not the most important for all JC shippers. And now it is at least in part canon. So in it, the mirror is a gift from Chakotay to Janeway, upon which, in essence, their romantic feelings for each other become imbued. But it's a gift that at this time, Janeway feels unable to accept because it would signify a change in their relationship status, which she just could not allow to happen whilst captaining Voyager through the Delta Quadrant. But the fact that she has seemingly accepted the mirror by 2384 would suggest that the status of the relationship has now evolved. Also seen on the shelf of items is the Charmuzi, which is a cultural symbol used by Chakotay's people, and in this case it's drawn onto a stone. And this was first seen in The Cloud in Voyager's first season. And as the wormhole, which is the only known path to Chakotay, is about to be closed, Admiral Janeway picks up the stone, clutching it to her chest as she recalls the moment that Chakotay offered it to her at the launch ceremony for the Protostar, as a beacon to guide him home. I mean, if that is not confirmation that they love each other, I don't know what is. He literally implies that she is his home. Powerless in that moment, all Janeway can do is hope for Chakotay's safe return. And therein also lies the paradox for all of those who want for JC. With no power of our own over what is already written or what will come, all we can do is watch and will for them to succeed. As the EMH puts it, hope is never a foolish thing. Well, I for one certainly will never lose hope for more JC. And if we do want to see more of this relationship develop in whatever way we want to, whether you want it to be platonic or romantic, the way to do that is to champion for more Prodigy. So keep putting those hashtags out. Hashtag set a course for season 3. Hashtag renew Star Trek Prodigy. We need a third season, people. These people know what they're doing. They have treated these characters so well in season 2, and I think that will only continue in a third season and a fourth season and a fifth season. Anyway, if you couldn't tell, I'm quite passionate about Star Trek Prodigy, and especially the relationship of Janeway and Chakotay that they have given us. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm sure you're all sick to death of hearing me talk about JC, but I'm not going to stop, so sorry. Make sure you do head over to our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, all the things, and let me know. I want to know your thoughts on JC. If you are a diehard JC shipper, reach out to me. I feel like you're my people. Find me, let's nerd out together. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for TrekCulture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.